Hello, this is Mike Predator006 with CardRunners.com. We are going to have our first pot limit Omaha high-low leak finder today. It's going to be on my friend favorite charity. His name is John. Our family have been friends for a couple years now, and a couple, 2, 3 years ago when John first came to my house, knowing I was an online poker player, he saw my three Ferraris and my multi-million-dollar mansion, and thought he'd give online poker a try. So John deposited a couple $100 and went bust, and repeated that process over and over and over again until he finally got pretty frustrated. We started working together. I was teaching him the game of poker, not necessarily PLO8, but while we were working together, instead of depositing money, John built his bankroll through free rolls. It took him 4 or 5 months to get that $100 back into his account, and during that time frame, John started to appreciate how long it took him to earn that money. So when he finally understood the value of it and played within his bankroll, he had a desire not to lose that $100. We started working together on pot limit Omaha high low. John became a stud. Now here's his shark scope as of November 3rd, and here's the OPR. He's been a very successful Omaha high-low sit and go and MTT player, and we go into cash games. How could you be such a successful sit and go and tournament player and just gosh awful on cash games? That is what we're going to work on today. John has done extremely well on every facet except cash games, and we're going to look at what he's been doing incorrectly and what some leaks are that he can improve on. So our approach to the leak finder today is obviously through Hold'em Manager, which I strongly recommend a database tool, whether it's Hold'em Manager or Poker Tracker. It's invaluable to be able to study our own style and opportunities, but also to be able to use a HUD as a tool and use it to improve our gameplay. So through Hold'em Manager, we're going to look at a couple different key indicators, which we're going to start with overall statistics and common ranges for those statistics. We're going to look at John's positional awareness, also when he 3-bets and when he's 3-bet against, those statistics. We're going to pull up some hand categories like aces, pocket kings and queens, and high rundowns. And we're going to look at some of the big pots that he lost and see what his line was on those, and if there are opportunities and things that he did in those big pots to improve and to minimize those losses. So beginning with the report, which is overall leak buster, some of the major indexes that you look at, we're going to start with our VPIP percent and preflop raise percent. Now 27, 13, and those numbers initially are very in line with a lot of long-term winners. In one of my coaching manuals, I have some statistics on some of the long-term winners in this game. And if you look, all of John's hands are rush PLO8, which is six-handed. And if you look at six-handed statistics on these players who've been some of the winningest players in Omaha high-low for a long period of time, those numbers are right in line with our average of these profitable players. So jumping in, that I don't think that this ensures you to be a winner, but by having numbers that are close to this, it probably enables you to have the potential to be a winner. So let's jump over that. we look at 3-bet percentage, 3.8. Um, and that's a number that I like to be uh, either extremely low or somewhere between 4 and 5 because if the people that have a 3-bet percentage of 0.5 to 1 are obviously very easy to put on a range of hands. If you open it up a little bit more, you can play some hands a little more tricky. So this is understandable and not out of line. And moving along here, our next key statistic is won money at showdown percent. 40.5 is extremely low. Um, and when I see this and coming over to our flop continuation bet of 74.7%, it makes me initially think that we are getting killed on hands that we go to showdown. And looking at the graph is exactly what I thought. Now here's his graph of all his hands he's played. Most of these are all last month actually. And we are going to click on, well, first of all, he is not running awful. He's running a little bit below expectation, so that's not the case. And we go into showdown winnings. His showdown winnings are terrible. His non-showdown winnings are positive, which in PLO8, my goal, and I tell my students, their goal should be to try to keep it around 0. But it definitely shouldn't be higher than your showdown winnings. So with that high of a flop continuation bet percentage, it jumps out to me that John is, he's when he raises, he's continuation betting 77% of the time, and he's not getting away from hands. A lot of times his continuation bet will win a small pot, but when he actually gets to showdown, if he continuation bets and continues on in the hand, he's at a major disadvantage and losing a lot of money in that situation. So we looked at VPIP and preflop raise of some of the long-term winning players in the game. Mentioned 3-bet percentage of where I like to be and why. Looking at some of the other statistics on here and what the ranges should be, when you are 3-bet, calling 82% of the time, I like that to be high, especially if you play with 100 big blinds or more, which is strongly recommended in this game. When you raise and someone 3-bets you, you've got such good implied odds to call, especially if you can put them on a very small range of what they 3-bet. So calling 82% of the time, just even with high rundowns, certain hands play better when 3-bet, when somebody else 3-bets than what you would think, but having this number high is more than fine. Going down the line here, looking at won money at showdown percent, this is extremely low. We want our range to be 55-ish. That's what a winning player's number will typically be. And 40 is just so extremely low. Our flop continuation bet, with the style that I teach and propose to my students, I think somewhere in the range of 55 to 60 is appropriate. 75 is very far. It's an outlier when you look at most of my students and the style that we play, and I think that when you get too far out of that 55 to 60 range, you can be exploited. Also, our fold to flop versus continuation bet. So we somebody raises, we call, they continuation bet. We're only folding 44% of the time, which seems kind of low. And that, just that number in itself doesn't mean that much. But when you look at it in what position you're doing it in, and if you're doing it with the potential to make a play, or if you're doing it because you're just kind of a passive calling station, it's yet to be determined. But this number in itself seems somewhat low, and I'm probably in the 55 to 60% range also. So moving on to the positional report, a couple things I like to look at is your VPIP and preflop range from different positions. Now, this is a little deceiving when it says early middle position. This obviously we're playing six-handed, so this is under the gun and under the gun +1 slash the hijack, so and cut off and button. But looking at favorite charity, the way he's playing out of the blinds, it seems somewhat ideal. Uh, slightly increasing as he gets towards the button, getting a little bit more aggressive as he gets towards the button, three betting in position more off. Obviously, on the button, he's not going to be three betting from early position, and these numbers seem somewhat decent. Um, his continuation bet percentage is extremely high, obviously in all positions. And if you look at fold to continuation bet, he's doing it. He's folding less when he's in position versus when he's out of position, which is a good sign. So this none of these numbers are hugely out of line. The thing that I'm looking at is this flop aggression is extremely high. And when I say nothing's out of line, I'm talking about hands that are played from early position through the button. When I look at his play from the blinds, it is shocking, this pre-flop raise percentage and 3-bet percentage. I recommend to rarely, if ever, raise pre-flop from the blinds, and rarely, if ever, 3-bet from the blinds, with the exception of if you're playing against a small stack and your SPR, your stack to pot ratio post flop is going to be in the 2-ish range, somewhere around there. Then three betting and raising pre-flop's okay, but when you're doing it from the blinds, I have a feeling that we're going to see some things. Well, I have a feeling because I looked, but this is a huge opportunity for him that we'll get into once we look at some of the hands and how he's playing them. What I'd like to do is go ahead into the filters portion of Omaha Manager and go into more filters, and we're going to look at hands that John 3-bet pre-flop. 3-bet hands are obviously some of the bigger ones that we'll play, and there's a lot of potential to misplay these type of hands. So let's kind of see how he did on 3-bet hands. Save and close. And obviously the hands that we 3-bet are going to be some of our strongest hands, and there should be absolutely no way that we're losing money when we 3-bet. Obviously the sample's kind of small. You look at he's done it 104 times. But look at some of these numbers here. Does anything jump out? One money at showdown percentage at less than 30% the times that we 3-bet. This is huge indicator of not being able to get away from a hand and overplaying it. So let's kind of see that as we go through some of these hands. What I'd like to do is sort them by big blinds won and lost, and look at some of the big hands we lost, and some of the hands that we were 3-betting with. Now, the one thing that's really jumping out at me right now is sorting it by the amount of big blinds lost. Look at what position the majority of these losers are in. A couple on the button, but 6 out of the top 9 are from the big blind. It's strongly recommended that you don't 3-bet from the big blind, especially with, obviously, the other player has somewhat of a full stack in these situations. Now let's go into some of these hands and look at what may have been done wrong. This first one, we have a raise, a min raise, and a 3-bet, which it's obviously going to be an above average hand for someone that min raises. This is probably a hand that somebody may have done that with. But when you're called and you're out of position against somebody on this type of board, there if you're betting into them and they play back at you, you're never good in this situation. Well, this could be a feeler raise to see if you hit that type of hand because you shouldn't, whether you have aces or ace two, and whether he has two pair or anything around there, he's obviously going to try to push you off this type of hand. But you know why are we calling here? We've got a nut draw to a gut shot and middle pair and a backdoor low draw. We never need to call that bet. Well, we never need to raise out of position, but you know, should we choose to do that, we shouldn't be calling that raise. Now we hit the nut low draw and check pot, raise all in. If you're gonna call, you may as well do it now. It doesn't matter, and we get in as a huge dog. I say we, favorite charity, obviously. Going into the next hand, we have aces in the big blind again. So we're going to telegraph that we have aces. And we're going to get called. And we obviously hit an apparently good flop. We're ahead. It's kind of a cooler that this happened, but it may slightly be able to be avoided. But either way, I think a lot of money's going to get in, even if you play it a little more passively on this one. So it's just when you raise, people have the implied odds to call you, especially in position, knowing that you're going to stack off with this type of hand no matter what. So um, it's you're never going to get somebody to fold to a re-raise in most situations. And here's another one from the big blind. And we're doing it into a $30 and a $93 stack. And we're continuation betting, which at 75% is high in general, and we're continuation betting this board when, if I had any flush draw on a king, even just a king, I make a play back at you, try to get you to fold your aces here. And we have a pot raise. And we get it all in as a 23% equity underdog. I looked at this one. This one kind of baffles me. We have a 3-bet raise with ace, king, jack, jack, rainbow, and a re-raise. First of all, the 3-bet re-raise was pretty awful. And this call on this board, knowing that there's a high probability he has aces either way, but even if he doesn't, you're if he had ace 2 king, you're at 20% equity in the hand, if that, 10% equity. So this was an awful play. There's a lot of opportunities here, and when you look at 3-bet pots, let's jump into this next one. And we're obviously going to continuation bet because we do it a large majority of the time. He has an underboat here. Hey, against King Mac. King Mac was on that list. Let's look at how King Mac played that as far as the long-term winners in this game. Did a small raise from the cutoff. He calls with a pair of nines. Hits the nut flush draw on 2 pair. He's got to put favorite charity on at least an ace king maybe in this situation. This is one of the weaker holdings he should have. and makes that call and hits the overboat and calls on the river. As you can see, these flop continuation bets are getting him in trouble, especially uh, when he's three betting pre-flop. Some of the hands we looked at were played terribly. There's opportunities there just to play them halfway decent. I don't even really know. Here's another one out of the big blind with this is an awful hand to raise to three bet with, and this hand plays terribly against someone that four bets because by chance if they have ace, you're in awful shape if they have a 2, 3, or 4 in their hand. 73-27 is an amazingly large dog in this game, and we're going all in pre-flop with it. So just by looking at some of these three bet hands, this should be positive 208 big blinds 100. There's some obvious misplayed hands in just some of these, but three bet pots are something that John really needs to work on. So now I'm going to go ahead and edit this filter to look into when he called three bets and what types of hands that he's doing it with, and if they have the potential to be profitable. So we're going to face three bet pre-flop true. Oh, called three bet pre-flop true. Well, this is kind of jumping out also. Maybe if John eliminated all the hands that he either three bet or called pre-flop three bets with, that he'd almost be an even break-even player just by doing that. But we are not doing it. We're not. I don't expect somebody to be a huge winner in this, but you can, by playing certain hands, you can really take advantage of doing it in position. You can use implied odds if you have deep stacks against somebody else. And looking at some of these hands that he's doing it with, he's done it 73 times. He's been three bet and called. Well, obviously you're going to be doing it with your ace twos and things like that. But when I look at a hand, let's sort these. Looking at some of these hands that he lost, these are hands that play terribly against three bets. Some things that may play decent against three bets, this 2, 3, 4, 5 would. Queen, queen, jack, jack. King, queen, jack, 10. Those type of hands play great against it, but the ace 3, 9 kings against somebody's three bet range. Look at some of the hands that everybody else is three betting. Here's queen queen 10-2 and a queen queen 6-3 and a king queen queen 7. Those are pretty poor, but look at the rest of these hands. And look at how they compare to your hand. This ace 3, you're totally in bad shape. With a worse wheel card, here you're in terrible shape. Most of the time you should have a hand that is a little bit sneaky, because when you call the three bet and you want to pick someone off when they continuation bet, you want to have a hand that's going to play well against aces, and a hand like ace 3, 9, king isn't going to be that type of hand. Which this one actually post flop, it appears to be decent. You've got the nut flush draw and two pair. I don't fault somebody for going with this in this situation. Now I fault them for calling pre-flop with this, the three bet. It's okay to raise and then fold this type of hand. It just does not play well against somebody that three bets. Their three bet percentage is 4.3. I've got over 1,000 hands on them total. Um, so they're obviously doing it with more than aces. Now that gives you a little more of a reason to do it with this type of hand. But if Nitro Fish or Check Player here would do it, you almost automatically put them on aces, especially with the fact that they're doing it out of position from the blinds gives them more potential to have aces. Now, if they do have aces, which in this situation queens are very similar to aces, they're still 70-30 against your flush draw, and your ace nine may you can't expect an ace or a nine to be good to have the higher boat than the queens over nines if they're queens over aces or whatever. So you you know you really need to look at what kind of hands play well against a three bet pot and get rid of the rest. Now this one does, but overplaying it post flop is probably not the best thing to do. Now, well, it's only a $10.40 bet, but a lot of times they have aces, and it's a small enough bet that I don't absolutely mind a call here. But if somebody I've always preached that the high rundowns and the high pairs, the high kings and queens and things like that they play a lot better against somebody with a deeper stack. Because when we do hit, we want to get the most bang for our buck, and raising with this type of hand, pre-flop is probably not the best thing to do into smaller stacks. You've got three smaller stacks at the table, because when somebody does three bet you, any one of these guys, you're calling and you don't have the potential to win a big pot should you hit. The the four out of 20 times that you're going to hit a jack or a queen pre-flop or post-flop. Now also looking at some of the hands he won. I mentioned before that this type of hand doesn't play well against somebody that three bets. This does. This does to an extent. Ace 2 3 4 does. Obviously your aces do. Um, you know, somewhat does. Having an ace with two more wheel cards isn't that bad of a thing. Ace 2 3 3 actually does quite well against somebody that has aces. Um, so some of the hands, when you look at this group of hands that he won the hand with versus aces, versus not necessarily versus aces, but for somebody that three bet, uh, in opposed to the hands that he lost, uh, big pots against somebody at three bet, you can see that the hands here wouldn't nearly play as well as some of the hands here. Next, I'd like to go ahead and edit this filter to, let's clear this, and go into aces. So, yay, we're a winning player with aces. 175 big blinds, 100. My goal is to be over 500. Uh, he must have misclicked. Typically, newer players play 100% of their aces. Pre-flop raise 90%, 3-bet 75%. I'd be interested. Let's go ahead and change this to position. So with aces, we're losing from early position in the small blind. We're three betting out of the blinds, let's say half of the time when we have aces, and when it gets to showdown, we're not doing that well with them. So there's a lot of opportunities to play a little more passively, I would think. Um, by looking at this, we're continuation betting 90, almost 90% of the time. It's rarely succeeding. One money at showdown is hugely negative. So the money that we're winning at we're winning by pushing people off of hands, and we're not winning with the best hand when it gets to showdown. Again, what I'd like to do, there's only 300 of these. Let's go ahead and sort them by big blinds, won or lost. This can't be all of them. Oh, it's pulling up only the small blind ones. So let's go. And you can pull up just the small and big blind ones and see how those are being played, but since we don't have a whole lot of time on the video, let's look at how some of these were played. So we're doing it from the small blind again, and we're never going to get anyone to fold here. Yeah, it's when you bet that flop and you get a raise and a call, you're gonna have somebody with aces and somebody with a or eights with an eight and somebody with a better low draw than you. There's no need to call that raise. You're never gonna win here. It's first of all, don't raise out a small blind with aces like that. And the next largest hand we lost, we also raised from the big blind with aces. And it appears to be good. We looked at that. How many of these are from the blinds? Here's one from the button. Let's skip down to that. We know that John is overplaying hands from the blinds. That's going to be one of his biggest opportunities, I believe, especially with his bigger hands. There's a lot of potential to play a little more passively pre-flop and surprise and trap people with your big aces from the blinds. They never expect you to have them in, if you just call a pre-flop raise from the blind. So, there's when you telegraph that you have it, whether you do or you don't from the blinds, you're going to get called, and when you continuation bet, people are going to be picking you off with, even they may even call a flop bet when they have a pair if they can put you on just having aces. Okay, we're never going to get rid of that one for $35. Let's oh. So I don't totally mind a check behind here. Now that he raises, we're typically going to be up against a higher flush draw or even two pair, a wrap. Those are probably the three hands in his range. That's obviously set. Um, Now, when that queen hits the turn, it's time to fold, I would think. Calling here with the potential to make a low flush, whether it is good or not, is still up in the air, and this turn calls totally out of line. And a bet call. So there are opportunities for John to play aces a lot better. Yeah, he's winning with them, but uh, the better players in this game are winning 500 to 800 big blinds 100 with their aces. So let's go ahead and edit this filter and change this to a pair of queens and kings. Okay, this is great. I'm a firm believer that kings and queens can be extremely profitable in this game if played correctly. Now, when I say played correctly, I like to raise with my whole range, whether it's from early position or late position. And my whole range includes high pocket pairs, kings and queens, and rundowns and hands like that. And especially when people three bet, I call with these type of hands, and they do really well against typical PLO8 hands that are going to be re-raising you. But they also just play well and raise pots. So looking at some of the hands that you know his statistics with this, he's playing half of them, um, and looking down at a lot of these, there are some hands that he can cut out of his range. Like I wouldn't even. Oh, he folded this. Well, I was gonna say I wouldn't even play that. But let's look at some of the ones that he. Well, we've got a couple re-raises here. He only re-raised 5 times. Uh, this is an interesting hand. Re-raising from the small blind with this type of hand, it's probably not that great of a thing to do, but considering the fact that you had 3 people voluntarily put money in, making this a huge multi-way pot with this hand, it may not be that bad of a play. Now that you have this raise, well, you can't assume well, you can't assume that both of these players are going to call, but if they do, obviously we have 40% equity. This hand plays well against somebody unless somebody has aces or kings, and with this many people in the hand, chances are that they don't. So I don't really think that was that bad of a play. I typically won't raise from the small blind at all, but it kind of worked out this time. So John's winning with kings and queens, and looking at some of the hands that he actually played, those are the ones he checked. Let's look at the hands he raised with when he had kings and queens. An ace with a 7, 2 kings, not bad. Queen and 2 wheel cards. These are all good hands to do it with. A little bit questionable right here. But looking at the range of hands that he's raising with these high pocket pairs, they either have some type of component with them that makes them more appealing, like this king, queen, queen, jack, or they have a couple wheel cards to go with them, like ace 2 queen queen, obviously great. Even the queen queen 2 5 and king king 2 3. So I think that that since he is winning with kings and queens has a lot to do with his raising with his good ones. Now looking down here, well, he's raising with a lot more than that, but in general, these all look halfway decent. And we're folding bad kings and queens in general. So I guess the moral is to play kings and queens to do it profitably. Do it with rundowny type hands with more potential than just hitting your set, and or wheel cards, and get away from the king queen queen threes and the queen queen 4 sevens. There's actually a report in here. We can clear. I have a report that probably can be found online. hand groupings for Omaha 8 and here we go, it's this one here. These are good indicators right here. We've got 4 high cards with a pair. And we are winning 263. Of course, our adjusted expected value is lower, but we are winning money. High 4 cards without a pair. These don't paint as pretty of a picture as it did when we just pulled up the kings and queens in the filter. But if you choose to play kings and queens, doing it that way is going to allow you to be profitable. You know, the 4 high cards without a pocket pair, that's going to be our rundowns here. Let's go ahead and look at these hands. There's 61 of them. Oops. Let's look at some of the ones we lost. Well, there's only one big one that we lost. And typically what I like to do with these, I'm going to be raising them from any position, but a little trick is I like to 3-bet these against somebody that's deep. Let's say that Angry Fish here raised, and I have this type of hand, and I also have, 160 big blinds like Angry Fish did. I like to 3-bet with this type of hand. It's kind of surprising. There are 2 parts about it, and number 1, when you 3-bet this hand and it hits, they'll never put you on it, and you'll win a big pot. And when it doesn't hit, when it hits the apparent hand that you should be 3-betting, like say it's an ace 9 5 flop, you can continuation bet that and win it a majority of the time, even if it's like a 3 5 6 flop. If somebody checks, you can continuation bet unless they've got it. They're going to get out of the hand because they expect you to have that type of hand. And I can already kind of tell that this one just was kind of a cooler. We have 70% equity against somebody that looks really strong to have hit the hand. So made a great play here. I love it. But got sucked out on the river here. So this is a way to go into. We've got hand groupings, Omaha 8 or better. I'm sure you could search for it and hunt these groupings down, but it shows you a lot of different groupings that you want to know. From aces, certain types of aces, and your high cards and your middle pairs and everything like that. So check that out. So we've looked at a lot of the big hands he's played when we examine the 3-bet pots and the aces and the high rundowns, king, queens, and when he's faced 3-bets. So let's kind of summarize what we saw with favorite charity here. And go back into PowerPoint. So as far as findings, we saw a huge opportunity to eliminate him raising and 3-betting from the blinds. A lot of the large pots that he lost was attributed to doing this. Even with aces, people are never going to fold. They will always have position. You're continuation betting so much that they've got, if they hit a decent piece of the flop, they're going to be able to take advantage of you, and you're stacking off very light in those situations. Next is consider continuation betting based on statistics and hand strength. When I say that, a lot of times my choice to continuation bet has to do with my HUD showing how often my opponent will fold to a continuation bet. I like to color code that statistic. You've seen it on my other videos, red, yellow, and green. If somebody folds to 80% of the continuation bets, I'm going to make them a large majority of the time, versus if somebody has a called continuation bet percentage of, or fold to continuation bet percentage in the, 40 to 50% range. So consider using HUD as a tool with whether or not you're going to continuation bet, but also look at your relative hand strength versus uh, somebody that folds to continuation bets. You're going to want to do it with almost every hand. To someone that does rarely folds, you're going to want to do it with your extremely strong and your medium strength hands. And for somebody that's right in the middle, say that they fold to, or they call, 70% of the time. If they're right, 65 to 70% of the time, fold percentage. Not if they call, if they fold to 65, 70%, then you may want to consider doing with your higher end range and your lower range, and maybe play a little passively on your hands that have equity. So your low draw with a pair type hands, you may want to wait until you hit that second pair or you hit the low to go ahead and play against people that are right in that middle side part of the range. And I have a feeling, we didn't get much into it, but I have a feeling that John's also overplaying low draws. So when your continuation bet percentage is that high in the mid 70s, you're obviously going to be betting your ace twos on a 6-8 queen flop when you have ace 2 5 jack and you have no pair and a low draw. If you're betting that much, you're going to be betting those type of hands also. So look at your low draws and consider slowing down on your continuation bets depending on statistics, hand strength, and whether or not you've got the potential to win a two-way hand. Also, we looked at three betting, and John needs to understand a little bit better about what hands play well versus somebody's three betting range. If somebody's 2% as far as their three bet statistic, then your hands that do well aren't going to be your ace 3 7 kings. They're going to be more like your king jack queens and your your rundowns and your 2 3 4 5s and your ace 2 3 3s, things like that don't play as poorly as some of the hands we saw John calling with against somebody that three bets into him. We're definitely going to look at how we're playing our aces. We're really overplaying them out of position. We're continuation betting with 90% of them. And when we're getting played back at, when someone shows strength, or when we show strength and someone attacks us, we're most likely way behind. People rarely make moves, especially at this stake. He's playing all rush PLO8, quarter 50. So when somebody makes a move like that, they typically have it, and consider if you have the equity to continue on with what appears to be the current nuts on the flop. Maybe it's top set, or even as weak as top two pair. You need to look at how your hand plays against that type of range when somebody shows that strength. And last but not least, if you would like to have a garage like mine, John. Oh, hold on. That's not the website I copied it from. Here's my garage. If you'd like to have a garage like mine, don't overplay those hands that you've been doing, and look at your positional stats and your three bet percentage, and continue to work with me, and we'll get you there. Thank you guys. This is Mike 6 with Card Runners. Please go ahead and leave some messages on the forum. I'll be happy to answer any and all questions. This was a PLO8 Leakfinder with Favorite Charity. Thank you, and have a nice day.